I know we're fans of hyperbole here on YouTube, but I legitimately just found attachment and augment combinations that can literally change the way you play Black Ops 6 Zombies forever. I've got tons of stats and some of my favorite graphs because today we're taking a look at one of the most important attachment slots in Black Ops 6 Zombies, the stocks, as well as one of my favorite all-time attachments, the Tac Stance. Now, if this video is too long for you, you are in luck. I have put chapters in this video so you can skip to whatever section you're most interested in or to the end for the final results. Now, as for the rest of us, you might have noticed that I am using Tac Stance in a lot of my recent games. And this video started off with just, okay, what is going to be the best, most efficient Tac Stance build that I could show you the benefits of, and it snowballed into so much more. I decided to take a deep-ish dive into the stock attachments that we have in Black Ops 6, and what I found, at least for me, heavily changed how I'm going to be building every single weapon from here on out. Now, before we get into the fun data, we need to talk about all of the different modifiers of these stock attachments. There are a ton of things. There's hipfire movement speed, just basic movement speed, strafing movement speed, aim down sights movement speed. What do they all mean? Well, I'm still not sure, and we'll get to it. But instead of trying to figure out exactly what those movement speeds mean, I decided to test a couple things specifically. I wanted to take all of these attachments and test them and test how fast we are when we're aiming down sights, when we're using Tac Stance, or when we're just basic hit firing, because the stock attachment is all about the movement speed. As you can see, I tested out ADS, Tac Stance, hipfire, moving forward, moving to the side, because that's a different movement speed than moving forward. That's like strafing. Well, it's actually not strafing, but it's something different. But then on top of that, there is a special augment in the stamina up category called STALKER that changes how fast you move. And so I needed to test all of that again with no attachments, and then with every single attachment, I had to do this test. Now, due to the volume of everything that I had to test, I only tested out each combination of things once. And so I want to give this preface. I used I think it was the AIMS 85, and I have to emphasize the stock attachments, the specific percentages, the specific amount that it changes or affects your movement speed is different for every single weapon. This is just like the CHF barrel. This is just like rapid fire. And luckily, the in-game stats are, at least from what I can tell, fairly accurate. Additionally, all of these tests were done with stamina up equipped, because eventually we're all going to buy stamina up anyway, so I figured it'd be best to have that as a baseline. So even when I don't have the stalker augment on, I am still running stamina up. But again, I want to emphasize the exact percentages that we're going to see from these stocks are going to be different for every single weapon. But you should be able to use the detailed stats page within the gunsmith to see just how big of a gain you're going to get with all these attachments. Now, in terms of how I tested out these speeds, well, I went into a game of Liberty Falls. I went into one side of the bowling alley and pinged the opposite wall. I saw that it was 19 meters. That's great. And then I walked to that wall and it still had 1 meter left. So I'm assuming that distance is 18 meters. And that is the number that I used for this entire test. And all I did was either ADS, Tac Stance, or hipfire walk from wall to wall, either forward or to the side. Now, naturally, there is going to be quite a bit of margin of error with this testing method. I guarantee you I'm not walking exactly perpendicular to these walls. I guarantee you there's some weird like jiggle once I get to the wall sometimes, and I don't count the frames exactly. But while the numbers of my data for the exact like meters per second or seconds or whatever, while they might not be precise, I do believe they are accurate because they fully represent and align with what the gunsmith says all of these stocks do. Are we all on the same page? I really hope we are. So let's jump into one of the biggest spreadsheets I've ever made. You could see the attachment we have on our left, whether or not we were aiming down sights using Tac Stance or hipfire, the direction we were going, either forward or to the side, and whether or not we had stalker or not. You could see this is the distance of that 18 meters, but I am going to hide that because, well, they're all 18 meters, so that's all it's ever going to say, so I'd rather save the screen space. And then we have the time that I calculated by counting the frames of all of these tests in Premiere Pro. This took quite a while. And then I was very easily able to calculate the meters per second from the time and the distance here. Very, very simple. And then we've got some fun stats here on the side. Now, there's going to be a lot of of numbers here, so I'm going to try to speed run through this. But here is our base no attachments. You can kind of see right away, you could see the stalker versus not stalker column here, which means that these tests right here with stalker versus these tests without stalker, stalker in terms of stamina increases your movement speed while you're aiming down sights. So naturally, when we're doing our hipfire tests, we get 0 benefit from stalker. Now you see a little 0.62, that's again that margin of error, whether that's me counting the wrong frame or not walking in a straight line, that is completely normal. If you see like purple here, if it's close to 0, it's basically 0, there's no change. But you can see that stalker does affect both aiming down sights and tac stance, which is one of the coolest first finds that we have. But let's mix it up. Let's put on the light stock now, and here are some more numbers. The light stock is supposed to help with your hipfire movement speed, your base movement speed, and your strafing movement speed. And going into here, I kind of thought strafing movement speed meant your side to side movement speed. So I thought all of these side things were going to be increased because, you know, this is your strafing movement speed. But as we can see here, the ADS and tac stance got no measurable benefit. We went from like 2.8 here to 2.7, you know, to basically 2.8 here. Same thing, 3.17, 3.14. So basically the same there. So this strafing movement speed, I have no idea what this is in regards to zombies. What the light stock does do is that it does increase that hipfire movement speed. That hipfire movement speed is increased greatly, about 17, 23% here, 17% when you're going forward, 23% when you're going from side to side. That is a huge benefit. And if you are a hipfire machine, if you're running a shotgun, if you're running that compact, the light stock is going to be for you. Now, when we add on stalker to this, you can see not only do you get this incredible hipfire benefit from the attachment, but you also get the base stalker improvements with your aim down sights and your tac stance. So with stalker, you've got a lot more mobility, 23, 27% increase versus the base. Moving on to the infiltrator stock. Hey, this is just aim walking movement speed. And what do you know? It does basically the opposite of the light stock. Whereas the light stock was all about hipfire speed, this is all about your ADS and tac stance, getting you 19, 15% increase in tac stance. And then when you add stalker on top of that, you're going to be getting a 44, 46% increase in your movement speed. Again, I want to speed through this because I want to get to the graphs. It looks a lot cleaner on the graphs. The balanced stock is kind of like a mix of everything. Nothing too crazy. You're getting about a 6 to 10% increase with everything across the board. Then you add stalker on top of that, and then you've got a great amount down here with stalker and about a normal amount up here. Again, we'll get to it. Combat stock, huge red flag here. This is, again, just aim walking movement speed, very much like the infiltrator stock was. But then we get this flinch resistance, which in zombies, I don't know if flinch resistance even does anything, but if it does, it really doesn't matter. So it's basically like an objectively worse version of the infiltrator stock. Please don't use this. Please, if you have the combat stock on, take it off. It's worthless. There are infinitely better options. Now, I know you're thinking, okay, the strafing movement speed, donuts, what if shooting your gun while you're moving slows you down? What if it's a different movement speed? So I tested the combat stock while shooting, and I figured out it's the exact same thing. I only tested out the side to side movement, and you can see that 4.7, 4.73, 4.32, 4.34, 4.87, 4.84. It's basically the same whether you're shooting or not. Now that's the only test I did. I really should have gone forward too. I apologize that I didn't, but if anybody can speak to anything else about what the heck these do, that would be great, because also I didn't go into sprint movement speed. I didn't go into tac stance movement speed. I'm sure some of these affect that, maybe, but like I said, I was really focused on just when we are shooting our weapon. When it's that high round, when it's round 40 with the super sprinters and you need to shoot into the horde, what is the stock attachment that you're going to need? And so that's my seconds calculator. That's how I calculated everything from my Premiere Pro, counting all the frames. But I did add in some stats just to kind of simplify it. These two say the same thing, they just look a little different. The light stock increases hipfire movement speed by that. Infiltrator, it's ADS and tac stance and blah, blah, blah. You guys know. But if your eyes haven't glazed over yet, allow me to introduce to you all of the amazing graphs I have. So here are all of the different attachments. The different colors are the different types of movement, like red is going to be aiming down sights, green is going to be using tac stance, and blue is going to be using hipfire. You could see that if you're using hipfire with the light stock, this is the fastest movement speed you have. This is what's game changing about it. That light stock while you're hip firing is crazy. So with shotguns, with that compactor GPMG, that's the stock you need to be running. But I think the graph that makes the most sense to me is going to be on this page. Now this graph, it's a lot to look at. There's a lot of colors. There's a lot of information, whether you're going forward or back using STALKER or not STALKER. So I decided to simplify it a little bit. And I think this is the magic graph right here. This graph is everything. This is STALKER. This is your base without STALKER. This is your front, right, left, whatever. This is just your base movement speed, and then I have STALKER down here in a different graph. So I want you to look at this graph, and we have our 3 different ways of shooting, or 3 different ways of moving with the horde, I guess. You can either aim down sights and shoot at them, use tac stance and shoot at them, or Hipfire shoot at them. And from this graph, I hope you can tell that the Hipfire class is just it's so much faster to Hipfire your weapon into the horde. It is far more effective than using tac stance or aiming down sights. In fact, I have a little bit of averages here. I know it's a little bit small to see, but your Hipfire average is going to be 4.4 meters per second, right around here. The tac stance is going to be basically a whole meter per second less than that. And then your ADS is going to be slightly lower than that. So by default, tac stance, surprisingly to me, doesn't give you all that much mobility. Again, it's different for every weapon, but at least here in terms of the AIMS 85, you're only getting about like 0.2, 0.3 meters per second, which is really not that big of a deal. But then everything changes. Take a look at this graph, see how tall this one is, how kind of similar these two are, and how much further down they are. I'm just going to scroll down continuously, look at this graph compared to the other one. Look at how much taller the ADS and tac stance are compared to this. Look at how big of a difference that is. This difference is STALKER. Like we said, STALKER gives you about a 20 to 25% increase in not only your ADS speed, but your tac stance speed too. Look at this. With STALKER on, your ADS and your tac stance are pretty darn close to your Hipfire speeds. Because remember, STALKER does not affect Hipfire. So these two graphs are basically the same, or these two sections, the Hipfire sections are basically the same. It's just that STALKER increased both of these guys. And you can see this by the average. The average, instead of 3.2, it's 4.04, and for tac stance instead of 3.5, it's like basically 4.4, which is like 0.05 meters per second away from the average of Hipfire of all of these different attachments. This is where the money is. If you're gonna be using tac stance, you need to run STALKER. Now, if you're not running tac stance, you should still run STALKER, because if you're not hip firing, you're most likely aiming down sights. And if you're aiming down sights, you don't want to be down here in the 3, maybe not even 4 range. You want to be as fast as you can when you're shooting your weapon. With STALKER on, even aiming down sights, you are like less than half a meter per second away from the fastest you could possibly shoot your weapon in the game with your Hipfire. And this is where you get that beautiful view of, if you want to center your class around Hipfire, you look at the Hipfire graph and you say, okay, I'm going to use this one, which is the light stock, which we were talking about. If I'm going to be aiming down sights at all or using tac stance at all, and I want to be as maneuverable as I can, I better be running this green one, which is the Infiltrator Stock. And if I'm running the Infiltrator Stock, why not run tac stance and get that little bit of extra speed? Because when you run the Infiltrator Stock with tac stance, you're really right on the edge of 5 meters per second, which is the 3rd fastest movement speed on this entire graph. It is only beaten by the light stock with the Hipfire, as well as the balanced stock with the Hipfire. And I should mention the balanced stock is exactly what it says. It's balanced. It has a decent ADS speed, a decent tac stance speed, and a decent Hipfire speed. If you just can't decide, run the balanced one and you're good. And like I said, just never ever run the combat stock. It's worse than the balanced. It's worse than the Infiltrator. I guess it's better than the no attachment one, but that's about it. Now I can tell you're pretty satisfied. All right, aim down sights, I'll use the Infiltrator. Hipfire, I'll use the light stock. I'm not going to run tac stance, but allow me to show you a couple things about tac stance. First of all, little tiny detail. When you aim down sights, you zoom in, so your field of view, your field of vision is a little bit more narrow, which can be good in a game like multiplayer or campaign or something. But in zombies, when you've got so many things to pay attention to, you've got a mimic over here, you've got an amalgam, you've got a disciple, you've got a doppelganger coming at you. Having a wider field of view is so important. And when you Tac Stance, your field of view does not change. You could still see the entire room. You could still see the entire horde of zombies while you Tac Stance instead of aiming down sights. Another benefit, you don't need to worry about iron sights because you've got this really tiny crosshairs in the center. That's the only thing you're worried about. It's the cleanest red dot in the game, unless you put on like a huge drum mag and it like affects your whole screen or something. I don't know. But of course, there is still a benefit. If we take a look at this graph here, yes, Hipfire is going to get you a faster movement speed, but now we need to talk about accuracy because this faster movement speed is at the cost of accuracy. And Tac Stance is far more accurate than Hipfire, but is it worth justifying the slower movement speed? So what I decided to do was I decided to take the Frostline sniper rifle because it was a sniper and you're going to see the kind of biggest visual difference between aiming down sights, Tac Stance, and Hipfire. And I even tested steady aim just to get some percentages and see just how accurate Tac Stance is, because I thought Tac Stance helped you with a lot more mobility than it did. So I could be wrong about this, but luckily I don't think I was. Now, on top of testing out the Tac Stance and the steady aim and all this stuff, I also tested out the dead draw Deadshot augment, which further reduces your hipfire spread, which also stacks with Tac Stance. So I'm going to show you this photo first. This is your base hipfire on the Frostline sniper rifle. The red notches are the default. The green is once you purchase Deadshot with dead draw. Huge benefit there. Moving on to steady aim, you can see we have a much tighter hipfire spread because you have the steady aim laser on. With dead draw, it's even tighter, so even better. It's pretty darn good for a sniper rifle. But then I'm about to blow your minds. This is what the Tac Stance spread looks like on a sniper rifle. The red default is crazy small already. You put on dead draw and it's like basically aiming down sights already. And here is what they look like all together. The red is the basic hipfire, the blue is the steady aim laser, and the green is the Tac Stance. It's pretty ugly. I don't know exactly how I want to represent this. This is one of the first times I've done a crosshair comparison, so I apologize for it being a little janky. Now, as cool as that visual is, what are the numbers behind it? Well, yet again, we're back to our spreadsheet, and here we go. I counted pixels in Photoshop. I wrote it down here, but it's pretty small, so let's just use our big graph right here. You can see at our base, the regular hipfire was 1,331 pixels wide. Putting on the steady aim laser reduced that to about 1,000 pixels, but Tac Stance alone, completely insane, 439 pixels, so much less. And if this doesn't convince you to use I think it's the dead draw Deadshot augment, I don't know what will. Just using the augment for Deadshot will get you a tighter hipfire spread than steady aim. And then if you use steady aim with it, it's even less. And then if you use Tac Stance with that, it's even less. It's crazy. If we look at the percentages, you can see just how big of a percentage difference the Deadshot augment by default, like we figured out way long ago, you're going to get about a 30% reduction in your hipfire spread by default, plus the steady aim, you get a 45%, plus the Tac Stance, you get a 75% reduction in your hipfire spread if you're using Tac Stance and the Deadshot augment. Or if you don't want to use the Deadshot augment, you want to use the one that breaks armor faster, just using Tac Stance, you're going to get a 67% reduction. Now, again, big red flag here. Every weapon, just like with the stocks, is going to be a little bit different. There are certain weapons, like I think the Cypher assault rifle has a very tight hipfire spread. I think the GPR also might have a tight hipfire spread, I'm not sure. Obviously, the compact SMG, once you pack a punch it, has like no hipfire spread, so all of this is different. So I'm not trying to sit here and like brainwash you and like use Tac Stance on every single thing, but I want you to realize how powerful some of these augments are. Stalker, this Deadshot augment, the Tac Stance attachment. It's just crazy how we can play with these different guns and make them functionally so different. For example, and let this be my last Tac Stance pitch to you, okay? Running the Infiltrator Stock with Tac Stance, whether you're moving forward or to the side, you will move faster in Tac Stance than you are in Hipfire. Look at this comparison of these green things here. When you're moving forward with the Infiltrator Stock, you're moving at 4.72 meters per second. If you aim down sights to your Tac Stance, you will move faster. When you're moving from side to side with your Hipfire with the Infiltrator Stock, you're moving at a 3.73 meters per second. You switch to Tac Stance and you speed up to 4.46 meters per second. This is crazy. It's so cool. But again, I don't know if this is for every single weapon. I really hope that it's proportional to all of these different weapons. I can't think of a reason why it wouldn't be, but as somebody who has used Stalker and Tac Stance and even aiming down sights with Stalker with those big heavy LMGs, with the sniper rifles, with even the assault rifles and SMGs. It feels really good. And so what did we learn? Well, first and foremost, Stalker gives about a 20 to 25% increase in your aim down sights / tac stance movement speed. The dead draw augment for Deadshot gives you about a 30% reduction of your hipfire spread as well as tac stance spread. If you have a weapon that you only want to hipfire, like the compact SMG, the GPMG, LMG, maybe all of your shotguns, you should 1000% be using the light stock. It will get you the fastest movement speed while hipfiring. If you are dedicated to either aiming down sights or using tac stance, the Infiltrator Stock will get you the fastest movement speed in those two areas. If you don't exactly know what you want, the balanced stock is pretty good at everything, even though it's not the best. And the combat stock is just like a weaker version of the Infiltrator stock, so you basically don't ever want to use it. It's more of a multiplayer attachment. In terms of accuracy, the tac stance is going to get you about a 66% reduction in your hipfire spread. If you want to consider that your hipfire spread, I don't know. But then pairing the tac stance with the Deadshot augment will reduce it to 75% of your hipfire spread. But most importantly, all of these stats, at least when it comes to the tac stance laser, as well as all of these stocks, the specific amount might just change depending on the weapon. I tested out the Ames 85 for all of the stocks, and I tested out the Frostline sniper rifle for the tac stance to see the biggest disparity in all of the pixels. On top of that, certain weapons have different specialties. Some weapons like the Cypher have really good hipfire by default. Some weapons like the GPMG and the compact SMG, when they're pack-a-punched, have basically no hipfire spread. So this video isn't a one-stop shop of just throw this one stock or throw this one attachment on every single weapon, but if you want to use a certain weapon a certain way, here's how to do it. And hopefully I was able to do that. There is so much data that I just had to skip over because it was just unnecessary. I even have a whole other sheet here where I'm going over the speeds and all this stuff, but there's so many colors. I just felt like it was way too confusing to go over all of this in 14 different ways. So I hope the two kind of graphs that I decided to focus on really helped you out here. And if you love this more analytical and statistical data, you are going to love this video. Be sure to check it out and stay beautiful.